The Kansas State School for the Blind presents Kansas COMS Chat, March 7th, 2025.
Okay, so the first part just talks about the driver's license info, and if it'll work, Mandy, I would love to show the video portion.
Since I get to see the older kids, they hit high school and the question of driving always comes up, and Linda sends all those patients to me to deal with it. One of the other things I'm doing in my semi-retirement is I'm on the medical advisory board for the Division of Vehicles in Kansas. So this is the committee that reviews the medical and vision restricted licenses. And one interesting thing of note, we're seeing a few licenses coming through with the diagnosis of cortical vision impairment. And as you all know, that's kind of like our number one diagnosis now in this age group. So be real cautious because some of those kids can have very high functioning vision. And I can relate one case that CVI patient who was older had failed 3 times on he had 3 wrecks and had his license taken away 3 times. And the state grants the license, the doctor doesn't. The doctor's role is just to report the vision and any recommendations. But the 4th time he actually killed somebody. So it's not unusual, and especially if it's somebody that lives in a metropolitan area, there's a lot of things coming at you at once. So be cautious on what we tell the families about driving, and I don't have any good answers for that other than there is one behind the wheel training program. I believe it's in Kansas City. Some of you might know about that. But be careful. I really hate having to sign off on those. I really try to get the regular hometown eye doctor involved in filling the forms out. And this goes back several years ago when there was a young patient who was denied a license his first time twice, and then the 3rd time he passed the drive test, which is a requirement most of the time, and then he went out and killed somebody, and the family of the deceased sued the state for granting the license, and then in the first of its kind, the state sued the eye doctor who was in Salina. Which that's never happened before because the state law says that we're reporting in good faith. So keep that in mind. Good faith does not stand up in court in Kansas. Other states have liability protection for who is ever reporting that. So the doctor's role is to report the vision and recommend suggestions, but the license is granted by the state.
So that's a really good topic, but I often find myself not knowing how to, most doctors, besides maybe Dr. Lawrence and yourself, know the functional side of CVI, but I don't think I've ever come across an eye doctor report that explains the functional vision of CVI, which is so different for so many different kids. And I often, I've never been asked by the state for a functional vision report for a kid. I wonder how I could help.
Yeah, I think communicate back with the doctor, and it's usually going to be driven by the family that, bad pun there, but they're going to drive getting the license because they want their child to be able to have some independence. And hopefully one of these days, I foresee a time when the state will actually have a license for a self-driving car for visually impaired patients. I mean, that's coming. We don't have it here yet, but the best we can do in Kansas right now is require a drive test where the state actually takes them out in a car and they have to prove that they can drive. If we look at the literature, and I've lectured on this at the COMS Symposium here a couple of years ago, there's a test called a useful field of view test. and it's done on a computer, but it's basically you're identifying a central target and then a peripheral target at the same time, and it's an age-based timed test. So it's kind of a visual field and a reaction time all in one, and it has the highest correlation for driving risk of crashes. The problem is the state doesn't require it. When I was in private practice, I had one in my office, and Dave Leverns, who was practicing in Kansas, was the one who got me on it. It's out there if you look it up. I think you can administer it online, but that's really the only way I would sign off on a license from a vision standpoint, is if I had the useful field of vision test. And I can tell you a couple just from history. Probably the person that did the best on that test, even if I compared it to a normal 30-year-old, was a young man that had albinism, and he had about 20/100 vision and some nystagmus, and he had the best score on the useful field of view test of anybody ever tested, even patients with normal vision and no pathology. So it's a nice test to be able to prove that this person should be driving. It's got over 50 peer-reviewed articles written on it, and I try to drive the state to get something like that for special licenses, but that's kind of an uphill battle because it's all driving laws are in statute. So your license is a privilege that the state grants if you can meet the statutory requirements, which at this point is better vision of 20/40 or better with or without correction in one eye at the doctor's or at the exam station. If they go to the doctor's office, they have to be better than 20/60 in one eye if it's for a Class C license. There was a person came through here a while back who that was on the review. He had a commercial license and he had one eye. So there can be some exceptions. I'm glad I didn't have to review that one, but I read some history on it. So your visually impaired students, be careful what you promise them when it comes to driving. But hopefully your local eye doctor can guide you in that way, or certainly I'm always happy to give you the steps that you have to go through to do it. I've got a kid from Abilene right now that we're going through the process. And in the state of Kansas, if you can't get a driver's license, you can drive a golf cart or an ATV. If your city allows it, you cannot cross a state or federal highway. So you can do that. And I've had patients that was the only way they could drive around town.
I also think it would be cool if we had better access to, free access to things like Lyft and Uber for visually impaired young adults, or I don't know, something like that. That would be another option besides self-driving vehicles. But
yeah, that's a great point. And the little apps like Seeing AI, which we all love to show people because it's free. That'd be neat if they could integrate some kind of Uber link in there for the kids to use that.
Also, if you ever need us to sign a letter to the state, I would sign it to get that test you were talking about, to make that mandatory.
Yep. Okay. So we're talking about it's peer-reviewed stuff, and I mean that's how we want to make the decisions. And as I've reviewed a lot of these cases, they'll go back 20 years. Once you're on a vision restriction, you have to have a vision report every year. They have to go to their eye doctor. They have to fill out the DV-135 form, send it to the state, and it's just page after page. But it kind of depends on who the vehicle director is at the time. And I've seen probably cases going back 4 or 5 different vehicle directors, and some of them are pretty lax, and some of them, most of them are pretty lax, I would say. But you can tell that they're doing what they're told to do by the state, and it's not always what we think is the best option. So,
real quick, I would love to hear what you guys think of the information. Hopefully, it's not a big repeat, but an opportunity for us as a community to kind of discuss the information.
I will say I did, while I was listening again this time, I looked up the useful field of view test. It is not expensive as far as a per test situation. So if it's something we all think would be good information to have, I can talk with Dr. Krug and our other doctors and see if it's something through Can Live Kids that we want to have available. Dr. Krug is the only one I've worked with so far on the driving question, so I'm not sure where the other doctors sit on that, if they want that to be a part of a Can Live Kids appointment or not. So I cannot promise anything, but if you all feel like that's something that would be just good information to have in general, I think it might be worth pursuing.
I've been to a clinic with Dr. Post about driving, so you might check with her as well.
I think that sounds great. I field of vision seems to be kind of an area of struggle to share, I think, and write in our evaluations and assessments. Just because if you're doing confrontation, it seems like it's a little bit tough to for sure get the degrees and specifics on that. So I think it would be wonderful to find out some of that detailed information.
I know this has been a topic that I've dealt with this year, and the thought of like there's skills that we teach in O&M that can be useful for driving, but not saying what I'm teaching you is a driving skill, like, or attaching that to driving in any way. But like, you know, if you're teaching someone to scan or to read signs from a distance or that type of thing, that could be helpful for driving.
So my big takeaway from that was that I always told kids that I don't decide anything about that. I don't train. I don't do anything. But it starts with the doctor. And I really like that the state is even higher level than the doctor on the final decision, because I think that's really important for the kids to know kind of how serious it is. You know, a car can kill people, so they need to really realize those connections. And yeah, again, always being cautious not to promise parents anything. I did go from saying you'll never drive to who knows what technology will do for you, but that's the only thing I ever changed in my presentation to kids who asked.
I have had kids, like, if we do the research on what it takes to drive in Kansas together in a lesson or something and compare that to their iReports and things, just so they have a better idea of whether it's something that is worth pursuing or things. But I always then say, but this is a conversation for your doctor, but this is something we could research together, just the beginning parts of it.
I think that's a great way to review their vision too. You know what I mean? Especially at that age. Well, the next part that I put on the PowerPoint is just talking about the different training programs in Kansas. So from what I could find, Avenues Driving, Pam Health Rehabilitation Hospital of Overland Park had a program previously, and Brewster Place in Topeka had a location for that driver's training. So those would be some options to, you know, share with families if the doctors thought that it was appropriate. And then also Ability KC in Kansas City has a program.
Okay, while you're working on that, I talked to Allied Independence, which is now the Social Society for Exceptional Educators. Andrea asked a couple questions and I wanted to let you guys know. So they do not have a person who's watching the codes after like a period of time. But if you're within the deadline and you get your codes written down and you go to turn in your CEUs and you're late, you need to make contact with the team there. And she said she wants to make sure anybody who pays for that certificate gets what they need. Also, we noted that there was concerns with too many emails. She's not sending those. There is a company that sends them for her, and she's not fond of it either, and she's working on changing that. So, Allied changed to SEE. If there's any other questions, go ahead and email me or something. Just want to let you guys know.
Thank you for that update. I appreciate that. I know we all get a little bombarded with additional emails and things. So if you go one more, Mandy, this was the driver's training program. So again, that's the Avenues Driving and Pam Health Rehabilitation Hospital in OP. Somebody asked if we would share the PowerPoint, so I'm just reiterating that I'm comfortable with that if you guys are. Brewster Place is another one in Topeka, Kansas. The place that I pulled this off of, though, I didn't have a date. So I would double check to make sure those programs are both still running. And then the next slide looks at Ability KC and gives you some information about their program, their number, and then they have on their website a beginning questionnaire before they even will start discussing the program with you. So I put a link to that as well. I thought it was extremely interesting that Dr. Krug said something about a license specifically for visually impaired people for self-driving vehicles. And so I just did a little bit about Waymo, well, not just Waymo, but self-driving cars and when they think it will be available. In here, I don't think I'm going to go over a whole bunch of it unless we want to. It might be interesting to have Waymo or one of those other companies talk at some point with us. If you don't know what Waymo is, it's an amazing ride. Actually, will you move? Thank you. Autonomous ride hailing service. So it's like Uber. I've ridden in one. I think I've shared that with you guys before when we were in San Francisco on a trip, and it was amazing. I would agree with the website in that I felt safer riding in a Waymo than I would feel with a typical Uber driver. And so that's another place to kind of look out or look up. It's moving to the bigger cities in the area, and they continue to expand. I know that originally in San Francisco there were two companies, and one of the companies actually got lost its license to provide services because they weren't safe enough. So, but there's also a little bit about how Waymo prepares before they start a new branch or area in there. But it's a pretty cool experience if you haven't gotten to do it yet.
Erin, I have a question for you about that.
Yes.
First, I want to know, where did you ride in the car? I want to know, could you see the speedometer? I want to know how fast you went. And then what did you have control over, if anything?
So it's very much like an Uber app. You request the spot. As you approach the car with your app on, it's like a Tesla, or I think Jag was used as only when you approach the vehicle. So no one else can get in. And once you're in the vehicle, you can sit front passenger or any of the rear passenger seats. And it's, I've only seen sedans. So you could have 4 additional people in the car. You can control things like your music and things like that, but I don't know a whole bunch of detail about what else you can control. I was riding with a frequent user at the time, and so I didn't directly deal with the interface. But we got we had three things that happened during our ride. Oh, and the maximum speed is 35 miles an hour. So it can't go freeways, it can't go, it can only go within the mapped areas. Kind of almost like Ride KC Freedom can only go within the bus routes area kind of thing. And then so we approached a flagger who freaked out that we were in a Waymo and didn't know where to go or what to do. And the car was able to determine, the safest path. And then we were driving along a street where you could park on the sides, and somebody veered into our lane and it immediately reacted. At Lighthouse for the Blind in San Francisco, the way that most of the employees enter is in a long alley, and it learned the alley and how to turn around with the frequent use of the people who are employees there having to get dropped off there. And it even had to move around different trucks and things that often were unloading in the alley. And it reacts immediately to a police officer. If a police officer comes up to the car, it will let them in.
I think we just lost Erin. The story she was saying was that when a police officer walks up to the car, the handles popped out. I think that part got cut off of her earlier, but with the Tesla, like the handles are flat, so no one can get into the vehicle. So when the police officer walked up to the car, he was able to get in the car and drive the car because the car got confused in a parking garage. So that was the story she was telling me with I think like the incline and decline of the parking garage. But the officer was able to get in and move the car.
So sorry, that was a long story, but that's just details on my experience. Does anybody else have an experience they want to share? Miss Mandy, do you want to talk about the progress notes?
I had a question of like maybe someone has good wording for progress notes for a student who has regressed, not on anything like teaching wise or anything, but the student's health or something has happened, absences, snow days, whatever it is. If anybody had anything to share with that.
I didn't have a regression, but one of my students, we had an intersection goal, and with all of the snow, and I only see her once a month anyway, I was only able to get out with her one day this quarter. So I just made a note of that and said, due to snow days and absences and things, I was able to take her out one day, but this is what happened on that one day.
Mandy, I have one I wrote due to weather conditions. So this is different, right? But the student has not had enough opportunities to complete his second benchmark. But then I said what he has been working on in lieu of that.
I like that wording of the opportunity, not enough opportunities. I like that. Thank you.
Yeah.
And Laura, I think that's great too. Cause like I kind of did that with one of my students that the goal, like their IEP was very recent. And so I said like, due to new goal, not enough time, but the student has been working on this skill.
Yeah. And I have two goals for my students. So the other one was a grocery store goal. So we were still able to go do that because, we can get to the grocery store as long as it's not icy. But so we had more progress to report on that one. And then I just made sure to note why she hadn't seen as much progress as we would have hoped on the goal that was for intersections.
I've had one where with like street crossings and a lot of regression, and a major portion of it was the students' lack of motivation. And then also the overloved is in this topic, the parents kind of doing everything for them for independent living. And so we just kind of had to bluntly bring that up in the meeting, you know, that the student, it was really had the opportunities, but they weren't motivated, and they were verbalizing that everything was being done for them at home. And so they really saw no need to learn it now. And the parents were aware of that, but it was, you know, just kind of a hard, like, conversation to have, but important to like get it all out there so we could address, like, how can we help motivate you? You know, what can we do to kind of have him do more stuff at home type thing. So wording wise, I think it was just about making sure he had the opportunity in both places, you know, kind of approaching it that way.
Yeah, I always just appreciate any kind of data. Without trying to be harsh, I often will say, you know, we had so many possible sessions. Yes, exactly what me just wrote, due to blank missing sessions. I'll even put like they came twice out of so many possibilities in the quarter or whatever. Not to be harsh, but just so that everyone has that data. Some of my school districts make me input my data every week, so they have that information in there, but not all districts do that.
Yeah, and what was helpful is that we actually had the facts of the data, but then we also had like the facts of direct conversations, you know, from the student too. And so just being able to present all of that was helpful. And it was hard, but also, like, I think just not being afraid to present the facts kind of helped that student be able to grow.
Thank you, guys. And Whitney, thank you for sharing that direct example too in the chat. Our next one is about recruiting COMS. I had a COMS student, or not COMS student, an orientation mobility student observing me yesterday. And she is in a class, or was in a group of 5, and now she's the only one left in her cohort. And so she kind of asked about, hey, are we kind of sharing our elevator pitch on how awesome our job is, and how much we get to do in the community. And I just wondered if people had any ideas about when and where that we can share our profession with other people who probably just don't know that orientation mobility is even a thing.
Well,
Go ahead, Whitney.
Oh, it's only kind of applicable, but next Friday I'm doing a career day at my kid's school. And so I'm going to go and talk about what orientation and mobility is and how to have it as a job. They're only in elementary school, so I don't know that it'll stick. But I've also reached out to career teachers in my district in the past and asked if they needed any extra people to talk about their jobs. But I'm excited for the elementary kids.
Dr. Deb and I went to a middle school last year. I'm sorry about the dogs, in Topeka, and then we've been asked to come back this year. So we kind of have a little thing we put together. I think I got part of it from Melissa Day. So I have, like, if you do decide to go do something like that, I have maybe some handouts or a PowerPoint that you could use.
Well, you sent that to me. I was actually going to ask before the meeting was over if anyone had anything created that I could steal.
I'm going to check with Melissa
today,
but she'll be totally okay with it. Yeah, I'll totally send it to you.
Jillian, thank you so much. It's so nice not to reinvent the wheel, right?
You could also look into, you know, shameless plug here, the sports van coming, because they do a lot of human guide and stuff. Might be a fun follow-up activity for the students in that building.
And I went to one. It was so much fun. It was high school students even, and it was so much fun. Leah's doing an amazing job.
Well, I'm glad you said that, Laura, because we had one here, and Leah did her spiel at the beginning, and whenever the students were done, one of them came up to her and said, after this, I want to be a teacher who works with blind students. But the other thing that I wanted to comment on was I just met with a teacher yesterday who's interested in the TASN grant. And we had the conversation about how when we went through school, we didn't even know these jobs existed. And that's kind of where we need to start, is with, sure, it's great with the kids, but we need to be in the universities. And I don't know why, but I never heard of it either. I was in education for 15 years before I even heard of this job.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
Oh, I just was gonna say, when I would do presentations at senior centers and all of that things, I would always be like, I'm an orientation and mobility specialist. Raise your hand if you've ever heard that. And I mean, for 12 years, I had maybe 2 people ever raise their hands. And so, yeah, I was the same way, that I'd never heard of it until the opportunity came up to become one.
All right, I was just going to say, I've been kind of making a list of universities and education department heads that maybe we as the School for the Blind might look at offering presentations to universities.
I think that's awesome. I've since I served the kids in the transition program at the local community college, I've often thought that that would be a great place to reach out as well, because students already are interacting with some of our kiddos from campus too.
I'm trying to put in the chat links to the video that AER created that's being aired on PBS. I copied too much and I can't get it shrunk down enough to fit in the chat, but keep watching. I'll have it there soon.
Well, I'd also like to share that, since we were talking about Leah, that we have a new promotional video for the Mobile Accessible Sports Experience. And it's going to go out to PE teachers, because we don't want it to just get shoved into this SPED world and not make it out to the others. So that's the goal now, but I can also send it out to COMS and TSVI listservs.
That'd be great. So our last thing, unless anybody wants to, or that's on the agenda is the Vision Symposium. So this morning, Pam requested that if we have any ideas to share with her about possible session ideas or specific presenters that we would be interested in having there, she would love that information so that the team can start working on it. Does anybody have anything they want me to share with Pam?
I feel like this has been covered probably multiple times, but assessments is always like a topic that I'm wanting to know more about.
Okay.
I'd like more CVI and O&M. I know Chris presented a little bit on it, but he didn't feel like he was necessarily the person that should be speaking on it. So I don't know if there is a person who is jazzed about CVI and O&M, but I could use more.
That one's tough, and I always like things that we can build, or like Whitney, when you showed us all the cool stuff that you were doing with your deaf-blind student. So I'm kind of a hands-on person. I love that kind of stuff. Well, does anyone else have anything before we wrap up for the beautiful weekend? Well, we appreciate you guys joining us on a beautiful Friday afternoon. Okay, April 11th is our next one. We are possibly working with Dr. Gerson to talk to Metaglass people, the Metaglasses people, but for sure we have Hans Jorgen Weiberg joining us from Be My Eyes on May 9th.
You can only do those with a low prescription. I looked into it. Even my prescription is too high for Metaglasses.
Oh, good to know. Thank you.
Yeah.
Like the frames won't fit thick lenses type of thing.
Yeah, I got that. Okay. Awesome. I appreciate that. I feel like I'm learning something about those every time I say anything about them. So, all right. Well, thank you guys so much. We appreciate your time today.
I just want to shout out to Aaron for having the slideshow and pulling all this information together, and shout out to Minley for willing to record and patch it all together and cut out all my whoops-a-daisies in the beginning and get that out for everybody to share. So, and thank you to all that share.
We appreciate you guys. Take care.
The logo for the Kansas State School for the Blind, a flying blue eagle in the center of a red and yellow sunflower.